All right, so this is psychology, PSY 2415, or behavioral sciences. So we are looking at defense mechanisms. The first thing is, what are defense mechanisms? Defense mechanisms, don't think about fighting, defending yourself when there's a battle physically. Defense mechanisms are unconscious mental techniques. The word there is unconscious. So these are things that you are going to be able to do, and these are going to be done by the ego to keep conflict out of the conscious mind. And that is going to decrease anxiety. Now, if I say ego here, you might not be able to understand. So let me try to describe it. What happens is, imagine you are in a circumstance. Let's say someone at home is sick. You want to buy for them medicine, you don't have money. And then you see someone dropping money. There's something that is going to be telling you, get the money. There's something that will be telling you, don't get the money. And then there'll be something that will be on the middle. At least you can compromise. You know what you are doing, what you're about to do is okay. So that those are three things I've described. There is what we call ego, the super ego, and the ID. Okay. So what would be telling you to say, do it. Ah, just drink, it's just beer. Actually, you are going to go and just tell, no, it was a mistake. What is telling you to do that is the ID. I and D. That's the word. The super ego will tell you, don't do it, don't compromise, don't do it. And then what the ego will be telling you is, just try to, just do it now. It's not always. So the ego is there to mediate between the ID and the super ego so that you make a right decision. So defense mechanisms are unconscious mental techniques. You don't even know that you are doing it. And that is going to be done by the ego. Remember, the ego is what is telling you what is in between. There's something telling you don't do it, something is telling you don't do it, and then that thing that is in the between, that is what is called the ego. So these things are happening without your awareness. And the aim of a defense mechanism is to keep conflict out of conscious mind. There is a conflict in your mind. There is something is telling you do this. Another thing is telling you do this. There is that conflict. So what happens is that without you thinking about it, something is telling you so that you can just shut it. Without thinking about it, it just happens automatically. And the aim of a defense mechanism is to decrease anxiety. Let's say, for example, you're in a situation, you were walking in the presence of girls, and then you bumped yourself in a stone, you fell. So you don't want to be in such a circumstance. You are feeling bad. So what will happen is that defense mechanisms will come in, and then you start making up things. Actually, no, that didn't happen. Or maybe you fall again. Now you just do it as though you had to fail naturally, but it was a mistake. You had to bump in something, so you fail again, and then you do it again so that people might think as though it didn't happen because it was a mistake. Those are defense mechanisms. You want to decrease anxiety, and you want to maintain your self esteem. So, those are what we call defense mechanisms. These are psychological strategies that are going to be brought into play by the unconscious. Take note, by the unconscious, in order to manipulate, to deny, to change reality in order for you to maintain a socially acceptable self-image. Okay, don't want people to think anything otherwise about you. That's why you are doing this. Let's go on. This trust me, psychology is so interesting when people interact. If you have got a contribution that you want to contribute, be free to just get to open your mic and contribute. If you have got a question, be free also. You are going to learn a lot by contributing. This is something about med school. It's not like natural science. You learn a lot by speaking, asking, making sure that you are clarified. Okay. Hope this is good. Are we good on the definition for defense mechanism? Yes, Priska. Okay. So I talked about ID, I and D, that's a spelling, ID, ego, and superego. Imagine you went with your friends for a party, and then your friends tell you just drink. It's not bad. So what will be telling you to allow you to drink, just drink. It's actually okay. Everyone is doing it. That is the ID. The super ego tell you don't do it. You know it is wrong. And then the ego will be there to now make sure that it mediates between the ID and the superego. Okay, I think you can just do a bit of compromise, just a bit, but don't do it very much. So that is what the ego will be telling you. Is that okay? Okay. So this is also very important. This more likely you are going to find this question in your test one or in your exam. So defense mechanisms are going to occur when the ID impulses are in conflict with the superego values and beliefs. All all defense mechanisms will be used in normal individuals. Yes, Emmanuel. Good evening. No, that. No, that's a full word. It's a word ID. Okay. So look at this. Defense mechanisms occur when the ID impulses are in conflict with the superego. This is when defense mechanisms are going to occur. Remember, mechanisms, you just want, you're unconscious, you're not thinking about it. You want to make sure that you stay out of anxiety. But then there is a conflict. Drink, don't drink. The defense mechanisms will now come in. Actually, just do it or don't do it or do this compromise and everything like that. Now, defense mechanisms are actually a normal part of life. It is going to happen in every normal individual. It doesn't just happen to some people. So there is a famous psychologist Freud who said that according to him, everyone is going to use defense mechanisms on an ongoing basis to be able to screen out things which are disturbing to experience. Even not really disturbing, but potentially disturbing. You know that this can disturb me. So the defense mechanisms are going to come in. A problem is going to arise when they are used in a rigid or extreme manner. Take note of this. There is always a problem if you use defense mechanisms in an extreme manner. Naturally, defense mechanisms are part of life. But when you use them in an extreme manner, then there's going to be a problem. Now, what is the purpose of defense mechanism? As we have said, the purpose is to be able to protect yourself from anxiety, to provide a refuge from a situation with which one cannot currently cope. You know that I can't manage in this circumstance right now. So okay, defense mechanisms are going to come in so that you get protected unconsciously. So usually defense mechanisms are going to operate on an unconscious level. Please take note, unconscious level, not conscious. You are actually not even aware. And the aim is to resolve a mental conflict, to reduce anxiety or fear, protect your self-esteem, and also to protect your sense of security. Now, what will be the categories of defense mechanisms? Defense mechanisms are going to be categorized into two, and this is the most interesting part that I want you to be free to ask because these are real things that we every day face. Defense mechanisms can be categorized into being adaptive or maladaptive. Adaptive defense mechanisms, these are health responses to stressful situations. It is healthy. So if there is a situation that is going to stress you out, so these defense mechanisms are going to be used. The opposite is true. Maladaptive defense mechanisms, these are mechanisms to cope with a situation, but they are not effective. They're actually unhealthy. They will not help you to grow. While adaptive defense mechanisms help you to grow, but these ones are going to hinder your growth and well-being. Now let's start with the adaptive defense mechanisms. And please, you need to know which ones are adaptive and which ones are maladaptive. You actually they are easy to know as long as you understand. So as we have said, adaptive defense mechanism, these ones are going to be able to promote a positive functioning and well-being. Okay. The first example of adaptive defense mechanism is altruism. You need to know what it is and at least an example. Altruism is finding emotional fulfillment by helping others and contributing to the well-being of others. You are finding emotional fulfillment. Let's say, for example, a person has lost their job and they have got financial problems. Even though they have got problems, they get to volunteer at a homeless shelter to help others in need. And so they end up finding a sense of purpose and fulfillment through that act of kindness. That is altruism. And it's actually nice because you're experiencing something bad, but you start doing something good to others so that it does not affect you. That is defense. You remember you want to protect yourself. So you are defending yourself. That is altruism. Something bad has happened to you, but then you do something for others to benefit, right? And then the next one is suppression. Please just take note also of the spelling. This one is double P double S suppression. Because I've seen some questions where they've put both. They put double P double S and then they put one P double S. Take note. What is suppression? Suppression is temporarily setting aside emotions or stressors to focus on more immediate and important tasks. And the intention is that you are going to address the issue later because there are some important things that you need to handle now. Let's say, for example, a person receives a rejection letter from applying for a job, or let's say you are proposing to this girl and then the girl, yeah, you are proposing to the girl rejected you, but then you have got an exam, you don't want to start crying. So what do? You forget about it. You forget a bit about what the bad thing that has happened, and your aim is so that you concentrate on something that is going to be that is very important currently. So that is suppression. You are trying to suppress one thing so that you concentrate on what is important. You are making a conscious decision not to think about, for example, let's say at home they don't have money, they've sent you to school, but there is not enough money. But you don't want that to affect your studies. So you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to forget about what is at home so that I concentrate on my studies. That is suppression. You are putting away something so that you concentrate on something that is immediately important. Are we making sense here? Is there any question or any contribution? Is good? Okay. The next type of adaptive defense mechanism is humor. Now, what is humor? Using humor, you are going to be able to use humor to lighten difficult situations or to cope with a stress. It is actually a health way to release tension and create a positive atmosphere. So what you are doing is you are expressing what you personally believe is right to others, but then you don't want to hate others. At the same time, you don't want it to affect you alone. So, for example, think of a person who talks about a time when they had to, let's say they were moving and then they had to slip into the mud while a group of people were watching. So you are actually talking about it so that it does not affect you. So you are using humor. Or for example, think about a person who wants to go and make a class presentation. But then this person is very nervous. And so before they can start, they crack a joke so that they can ease the attention and also get to win the audience. That is what we call humor. You are trying to do something so that you are able to create a positive atmosphere and to release tension. That is humor, right? The next one This is also adaptive, is known as sublimation. Now, what is sublimation? Sublimation is channeling negative emotions or impulses into something that is socially acceptable. For example, engaging in creative activities, sports, or volunteering to do something. Think, for example, someone who has gone through a tough breakup, and instead of them being sad, what they do is that they decide to join a local theater group and channel their emotions into acting and performing. So in that way, they are going to be more consoled. All right. So you are trying to channel some negative emotions into something that is positive. That is sublimation. Is there any question here? We are good. Okay. Now, when people become very quiet, yes, please. Okay. Okay. All right. So, Yuma, y- you are there. There is a situation, right, which is humiliating, and then you don't want to be on it, to consider it the way humiliating it is. So you try to be open by speaking about it without being upset. For example, say you had to fail as you were walking, but you speak about it happily so that it doesn't affect you negatively. For example, you are in class, you want to make a presentation, and you know that people might act, they are big people, there are a lot of people, and you are shivering. So you crack a joke, and when you hear people laugh, you gather some courage, you actually get stronger, and then you do your presentation. Wow, sublimation is you are channeling something that is negative. You have got negative emotions, but you take them into something that is acceptable. Let's say, for example, you are upset, but instead of you fighting people, you go and do boxing so that you relieve that stress. That is sublimation. Is that okay? Okay. And then the next one is assertiveness. This one you talked about it in first year DME. Assertiveness is just expressing feelings and needs and desires openly, and you're expressing them openly at the same time respectfully, and you are not being aggressive or passive. You are not being aggressive, and at the same time, you're not allowing people to take you for granted. And so you express yourself out. For example, say you and with your boyfriend you are arguing, but you don't want to be hurt. So you openly tell him, I'm not good, I'm not fine with what you have done. But at the same time, you're not saying it with anger so that you upset him. You are trying to make him know that you are not happy. At the same time, you want him also to understand. So that is assertive. Or for example, you tell your mother that you are disappointed that she was too busy, she didn't come for your graduation. You are disappointed and you are telling her. But then you don't want to tell her rudely. So that is assertiveness. Another one is anticipation. Anticipation is getting to plan and prepare for future stressors or challenges, which can help you to reduce anxiety and increase a sense of control. For example, you know that okay, the exam is going to be tough, so you decide to join a serious academy so that you prepare for the future that you are trying to avoid. That is anticipation. You're thinking about the future, right? So that is it. Okay, I've seen a hand. Please, you can go on. Okay, I think it's you might be out of you might be having few bundles so the screen can no longer move. Try to log out and then log in, or try just to add in some more bundles to your phone. Okay. So, are we good with anticipation? Have we understood it? Okay. Another type of this defense mechanism, adaptive, is identification with role models. So, where you get to emulate positive qualities and traits of people that you admire, and you use them for inspiration and for self improvement. So, that is also positive. I actually like the way this one is, how they conducted themselves. I want to be like them. That's not bad, right? It will actually help you to get to improve. Also, there is affiliation. Okay, so all right. Hope you can see now. Okay, affiliation. Affiliation is just getting to seek support and companionship from others during stressful times, and that is going to foster a sense of community and connection. If you are stressed, you don't want to be alone. All right, so you get to interact with others so that you seek companionship. You seek people to talk to people to be around or next to. That is affiliation. And then there's also acceptance. Now, what is acceptance? Just is basic English, acknowledging and accepting your own emotions, even if they are uncomfortable, as a way to process and cope with them effectively. That is what we call acceptance. If there is something that is not okay, you accept that it's not okay. There, you wrote a test, you didn't do well. Accept that you didn't do well. Not, no, I actually did well. It's just that they hate me, the lecturer hates me, and everything like that. That's not necessary. It will actually just make you not to be comfortable or not to actually improve, right? So that is what we call acceptance. So those we have listed there, those are adaptive. Those are good ways in which you can defend yourself unconsciously. So if that is what you do, then you are going to be able to improve. If you have got role models you look to, when something bad happens, you try to do something so that you don't feel uncomfortable. And if you are upset, you project your energy into something positive. Now let me ask you, imagine I am upset. So instead of me beating someone, I see, let's say, grass. I just get a slash and then I start slashing so that I project my energy because I'm upset. That extra energy so that I can use it to slash. What kind of defense mechanism is that from what you've talked about? Yes, I've seen a hand. Yes, suppression. Okay, that is your try. Hope you've not forgotten the definition of suppression. Remember, separation is there is something bad that has happened, right? And then you are trying not to think about it so that you concentrate on something that is positive. Okay? So, Emmanuel, good. It's actually sublimation. You are channeling negative energy into something that is a bit positive. That's something that is socially accepted. Okay. Okay. Sorry for there is another hand. Please, you can open your mic and speak. Or maybe it's a mistake on the hand. Okay, now let's look at the maladaptive defense mechanisms. Remember, we said the maladaptive, these are now the unhealthy ways, strategies to cope with stress or anxiety. These are unhealthy and do not make a person to grow. The first one is displacement. What is displacement? Displacement is redirecting emotions, especially anger or frustration, from the original source to a less threatening or unrelated target. So, say for example, at you are at school, your friend upsets you because you know your friend is you are on the same level. There's nothing that you can do. When you go home, you look at your young brother. They just mention something, but John, you slap them. Why are you talking to me? Ah, so that is displacement. You are projecting negative emotions on someone who is not even who doesn't even know what's happening. And this will not make a person to grow. It is maladaptive, right? Let's say for example, there is a you are with a friend in a competition. Instead of you telling your friend, making them known you are jealous about them, you go home and then you release your anger on your young ones because of the jealous that you have on someone. That is displacement. Very bad. Another one is intellectualization. Even from the way this is intellectual. So you are trying to handle something intellectually. Intellectualization. Now, this one involves distancing yourself from emotional aspects of a situation and focusing excessively on the intellectual or cognitive aspect. Every time you hear of cognitive, it has to do with the mind, analysis, and everything like that. So there's something that has happened, but you don't want to focus on the emotional aspect. You are trying to focus now on the intellectual part. For example, you are let's say for example this person loses the child in the road traffic accident, but then they don't want to focus on that negative emotion because their child is dead. Instead, they say, no, the reason as to why my child has died is because there was no hospital near. No, actually, my child is dead because the doctor couldn't do anything. No, my child is dead because of this. So you are trying to focus more on the intellectual part, what might be the cause, and not on the emotional aspect. And this is not really good because you are trying to hide your real feelings. This is negative because you are going to be just broken down in the inside and you will not be able to move on like that because you're trying to avoid something that is real. This is intellectualization. Yes, Emmanuel. Yes, please. Okay, acceptance is on the opposite to intellectualization. Acceptance is adaptive. It is good. There's something wrong that has happened. You accept. Actually, something wrong has happened to you. You accept. Okay, it has happened because of this and this. You are accepting. Imagine maybe there was a mistake that you made. You accept your mistake. But intellectualization, you are trying to stay away from the reality. The thing is, someone has died. Okay, you have lost your job. Instead of it's different from accepting, okay, I've lost the job. Now you start if you just say, okay, I've lost the job anyway, next time. That is acceptance. But intellectualization, what you'll be doing is you start saying, actually, I didn't even like that job. Let's say, for example, you approach the girl. The girl refuses. You say, actually, I didn't even like that girl. I was just trying to test her. That is not acceptance. You are trying to add some pretense to that. It has pained you actually, but you are trying to stay away from the reality. Is that okay? Okay, good. And then there's also rationalization. Rationalization is more the same as intellectualization, but rationalization involves justifying your own behavior or action or feelings with some logical or reasonable explanation. And that is often to avoid feeling guilty or to protect your self esteem. Not really different from intellectualization, but there's a difference. Okay. So when rationalization is happening, individuals are going to be able to create excuses or plausible reasons for their action or emotions, even if the reasons are not entirely true or accurate. And the purpose is one to reduce feelings of discomfort. Let's say, for example, someone didn't get a job they wanted. And then they start rationalizing the rejection by saying, I didn't really want that job anyway. It wasn't the right fit for me. That is rationalization. But I gave this example on intellectualization. It was actually supposed to be on rationalization. Intellectualization mostly has to do with you using the intellectual, the cognitive reasoning. You are trying to use some kind of reality to be able to stay away from what has happened. Okay, this has happened because this equipment wasn't there. That is intellectualization. This has happened because this wasn't there. But rationalization, you're trying to avoid as though something didn't happen, as so you didn't want it. But you actually, let me say, more ashamed. You are ashamed. So you are just saying this because it didn't happen to you. Otherwise, if it did, you'd have accepted it. Hope we can differentiate intellectualization from rationalization, right? Now, the next one is denial. Denial is refusing to acknowledge or accept the reality of a distressing situation or emotion. And that is going to lead to avoidance of necessary actions or problems. You are refusing to accept the reality. And so you end up not doing what is necessary in order to solve that problem because you can't accept. That is denial. For example, you are having some signs of a certain disease, and then you tell yourself, no, I'm just tired. Actually, there's nothing here. You will not be able to take action that is going to help you to solve that problem. So you are in denial, right? And then there's also projection. What is projection? Projection is attributing one's undesirable thoughts or feelings or impulses to others. And that is going to lead to strained relationships. And you might not be able to confront your own issues. So you are projecting things on others. Actually, you are the problem, but you are putting it on others. Let's say, for example, you are unhappy with your own body, like most of the girls are, and then you now start saying, you are, every person that you see, they just look at you. Start saying, no, they are just looking at me because they are thinking my body what. So you see, something that you already have within yourself. Now you are trying to look for someone that you can put on so to seem as though they are the ones in the problem, in the wrong. That is projection. And then there's also repression. Yes, please. Okay. Just the way you have said it, they all involve you not accepting the reality of what is happening. Intellectualization is where you are attributing something bad that happened to some fault technically or some intellectual reasoning. This didn't happen because they didn't do this. This didn't happen because this wasn't there. If the hospital was near, my child wasn't going to die. That is intellectualization. We are using intellectual reasoning. Projection is you are trying to put a blame on someone else. Okay? You can't accept yourself, but you put a blame on another person. That is projection. Is that okay now? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that is projection. Now, mostly take note of this. Projection mostly is going to lead to strained relationships. The next person will actually even be aware. You'll not be able to interact with them well. You even hate them, okay? Because you think it is them who is a problem while you are the problem. No, me, I can't make it because Mukape hates me. Really? You are projecting something that might be wrong on you because of Dr. Mukape. So that is the thing. Make sense? Okay. And then there's repression. Now look at repression. The spelling, it has got one P double S. Please. This is repression. There's also something known as regression. So don't confuse them. Repression. Repression is pushing distressing thoughts or memories into the unconscious. And that will lead to unresolved emotions. Let's say, for example, you there's something that happened to you when you are a child. Let's say maybe your father used to mistreat you. Now you are trying to forget about that, so you push it into the unconscious. You are trying to forget as though it didn't happen. But mostly, every time someone screams at you, you have those feelings as though you are trying to have flashbacks like that. So that is repression. You're trying to push something that happened to in the unconscious, and so you are going to have unresolved emotional issues, and there can be some potential emotional outbursts. Okay. Example, someone who had a traumatic childhood but has no conscious collection of a incident. They have forgotten about what used to happen. They decided to forget about it. So they are going to be struggling with recurring nightmares and unexplained fears, why they are always afraid. Because there's something that they are hiding within them, which they've pushed into the unconscious. Repression. So it's better you confront a situation other than you trying to forget about it like that, because you'll not forget about it. You might forget about it, yes, but it will affect you in one way or the other. There's also reaction formation. Now, what is reaction formation? Reaction formation is expressing the opposite of one truly feels. And that is going to lead to inner conflict and difficult understanding and managing one's emotions. For example, you are not happy, and then you are trying to bring out so you are happy. That is reaction formation. It's more like pretense, right? Reaction formation, not will not say pretense. Reaction formation, bringing out what you don't. Let's say, for example, your roommate. Every time you come in your room, you find the plates are dirty. You wash them, and then you just move. You come back, you find the plates are dirty, and then you are trying to, your face is always that like you're upset, and then they ask you, is there anything wrong? You say, no, all is well, nothing is wrong, but deep down you know that this person. So that is reaction formation. There's also avoidance. Yes, please. Uh-huh. Okay. So yeah, when suppression, that is why, where is it even? Okay. Look at this. Suppression is not something that is permanent. It's something that is temporal. And your aim is to address the issue later. You just don't want to address it there and then because you know there are some important things that you need to be able to do at that point. I don't want to be thinking about the problems at home if I'm writing an exam because I know it would disturb me. But immediately I'm done with the exam, I can now come back and face the reality. So it's not something that you are going to stay away for, put it forever and forget about it. That is because there's something that is immediate that you think is more important than you thinking about this other thing. So that is suppression. That is how different it's going to be with the repression. Because repression is you are trying to avoid something, you push it into the unconscious, you even forget about it. But suppression, you know that you are going to come back and face the reality. So that is why it is a health way of doing things. Is good? Okay. There's also avoidance. Avoidance is just refusing to engage with or confront challenging situations or emotions, and that is going to result to unresolved issues and persistent distress. So you're trying to avoid things, you can't confront them. Isolation is cutting off emotions from thoughts or experiences, and this will lead to emotional numbness and potential difficulty in forming meaningful connections with people. So, are trying to be able to cut off connections because you're trying to cut off connections from people for whatsoever reason. It will be very hard for you to be able to connect with people because every time maybe something simple happens, you try to cut off from people. Actually, you can't grow by cutting off from people. A lot say, I'm going to mind my business. That is not the best way to handle things. Minding your business is not the best way because you end up disconnecting with people and it will be very hard for you to form meaningful connections. So the best is if there's something that is hateful, that's why there's assertiveness. Be able to approach it. Tell the person, I'm not happy with this. And if at all they can't understand you, cut off that relationship with them, not disconnecting with everyone else that you know. So this one is more adaptive. There's also fantasy. Now we know what fantasy is. We are trying to live in a world that does not exist. Okay? Escaping from the reality, and this is by engaging in elaborate daydreaming or fantasies. And this is going to interfere with facing real life problems. You are seeing yourself as this Tom and Jerry. You find this big bank, the money is all yours, and you are just there feeling nice. You can't work. So that is fantasy, right? Daydreaming. Now there's also regression. Please, this is regression, it's not repression. What is regression? Regression is where you go back to being to childish behavior. Let's say, for example, I come to your room, I borrow your book, let me go and study some, and then because I don't return, you start crying. That is regression. Returning to behavior characteristic of early development stage in to respond to stress. Children cry if there is stress. Adults are not supposed to do that. So regression is where you revert back to being a child like that. You start crying and everything like that. Also, acting out. What is acting out? Expressing emotions or impulses through inappropriate or disruptive behavior rather than dealing with emotions constructively. For example, someone who is frustrated, they end up drinking because they are frustrated. Or let's say, for example, at home, your mother and your father are arguing. So you go and start just sleeping with different people, and you are saying, I want to relieve stress. That is acting out, expressing emotions or impulses in an inappropriate or disruptive behavior instead of dealing with them constructively. There's always a good way to handle this, but you end up doing this because you can't hold what is on hand. Passive aggressiveness is presenting a cascade of overcompliance to mask hidden resistance, anger, or resentment. So let's say, for example, there are co-workers who are unhappy with their assigned tasks and feels overworked. Instead of discussing their workload with their supervisor, they complete their task half-heartedly and make sarcastic remarks about their job. Okay, that is passive aggressiveness. You are doing what you are doing, you have not stopped doing it, but then you are not happy. You are doing it and saying, this one, the way he's treating us, the way this one is doing it, they send you to say, go and buy for me this. You get the money, you go and buy. And then now where you go, start saying, the way this one likes sending, and everything like that. That is passive aggressiveness, right? Pretending as though something is all is well, but then there's something that is not correct. You are not actually happy. So this is defense mechanisms. Those are the adaptive and the maladaptive defense mechanisms. As a summary, primitive defense mechanism. This is basically the maladaptive. You have got denial, refusing to accept; projection, attributing what you don't like to someone else; displacement, redirecting emotions from original source to someone who is less; regression is going back to earlier stage of development. You start crying, let's just start crying to respond to to a situation. The mature defense mechanisms, these are the adaptive. You have got sublimation, channel negative energy into what is accepted. Instead of beating someone, go and box. Humor, you use humor to cope with a difficult situation. For example, you failed, you had to fail or to sleep. You talk about it, you joke like that so that it doesn't hurt you. Altruism, meeting one's emotional needs by helping others. You don't have money, but let me just help others so that you find a sense of purpose. You also have neurolytic defense mechanisms. These, you are trying to use some kind of reasoning, but then it is still not okay because it's maladaptive. Intellectualization, overemphasis on rationalization, right? That is intellectualization, overemphasis on rationalization and abstract thinking to avoid emotions. You are trying to use reasoning to avoid a situation. The reason as to why this happened is because there was no hospital, there was no this, and there was no that. Reaction formation is expressing the opposite of what you feel. Actually, it is okay, but you know that your roommate, the way they behave is not good. Rationalization is justifying behavior or action with seemingly logical reasoning. I proposed to this girl, she refused me. Actually, I didn't like the girl. They didn't give me a Valentine gift. Actually, did I even want the Valentine gift? I didn't want it. But you know that you wanted it. That is rationalization. Self defense, defeating defense mechanism. These are also maladaptive. Passive aggression, indirectly expressing aggression towards others. You are not good with what people, someone sending you or someone's behavior, but then you are trying to do what they are telling you, but you are talking about it behind the back. Self sabotage. This is unconsciously undermining your own success or well being. As we had, me, I'm just a dog. What can I do? You're undermining yourself. That is self sabotage. It's not right. Even when you are joking, never joke about yourself because you are great. You can do it. You are powerful. You also have fantasy. You are living in daydreams. You are dreaming you are a boss of this company, but you are just sleeping. Denial is rejecting the truth. Acting out is expressing emotions inappropriately. You start drinking because of something that is happening. And then there's defensive withdrawal mechanism. This is also more adaptive as isolation, disconnecting thoughts or feelings from the rest of other people's emotions. Dissociation, mentally detaching oneself from a distressing experience. So this is it on this one. So now you can choose. Should we do the questions or I send them for practice? But unfortunately, for sending, I can't send. Only those who are going to access who have got access to the drive are the ones who will be able to access these. So we do them together. Are you going to be answering? I, okay. Okay. Question one. Hope you. It's not that clear. I should have. I just captured it from last year's test. Test one. From Freud's five defense mechanisms, which of the following is an example of isolation? A. Rachel just had a second child 2 weeks ago and devotes most of her time to a new baby. Her first child, John, who is 6 years old, is sucking his thumb and is acting like he's a baby again. Is that isolation? And then B. Jane lost her job last night. Her best friend, who knew how much Jane loved her job, asked her how she's doing. Jane responds very calmingly by saying, I didn't really like the job anyway. C. Darlene is alcoholic. She refuses to get help because she doesn't think she has a drinking problem. And then D. My mom and dad had a fight last night. They both took their frustration out on me, which only made matters worse. So, which one of these is isolation? Which one is isolation? Which one would you pick? Yes, Emmanuel. C. An alcoholic, she refuses to get help because she doesn't think she has a drinking problem. All right, thank you. How about others? Mm-hmm. Okay, C. Others? Okay. All right, good. So, number one, what defense mechanism do you think one can be? I mean, option A, where Rachel as a child, but the first child is 6 years, starts sucking the thumb as behaving as though he's a baby again. What defense mechanism is that? Regression. Good. Okay, how about B? Jane lost her job last night. Her best friend who knew how Jane loved the job asked her how she's doing. And then she responds calmingly and saying, I didn't really like the job anyway. What kind of defense mechanism is that? Rationalization. Good. My mom and dad had a big fight last night. They both took their frustration out on me, which only made matters worse. What kind of defense mechanism do you think that is? They took the anger on the child. Mhm. Okay, displacement. All right, good. What is an example? Yes? Okay. What is an example of regression? Denying something ever took place, holding your anger in, returning to an early age to cope with situation, telling the truth. See, very good. So these are all, anyway, you encounter them. While giving the examination, Neta wrote the answer taking the help of Google. The teacher gave him punishment, but Neta told his friends that the message passed to his friends about his punishment was wrong. What type of defense mechanism did Neta follow here? Projection, introjection, rationalization, isolation. Which one would you pick? C. Rationalization. Okay. How about others? Projection. Introjection, rationalization, isolation. Okay. All right. So in case you don't know what introjection mean, introjection just means you get to pick up traits from others. That is introjecting. Let's say for example, a baby is crying. The dad tells the baby to say, boys don't cry. You're trying to pick up things from others to put on the boy. So that is introjection. So this statement is not projection. The statement is necessarily not isolation. So we'd go for rationalization. Good. After getting up from bed daily in the morning, Nileshi sees her face in the mirror. He keeps, how come? Sees her face and then he keeps. Okay. She keeps the mirror on the bed so that she has not seen other faces first. Which type of defense mechanism is this? You want to see your face first in the morning. None of these: altruism, autistic fantasy, acting out. Which one would you pick? Okay, none of these. How about others? And then another, the third one. Okay. Tina's mother scolded her for not attending the classes properly. As a result, she became angry with her mother. Then she did 50 numerical problems of mathematics. What type of defense mechanism is this? Sublimation, undoing, splitting, suppression. Someone has said suppression. Priska, is that you? Okay, in this case, she's actually not work. uh, She has a problem. So she has a problem and she doesn't want to do the problem. But reacting to what she has been told, she now goes on with that anger. In other words, instead of using the anger to respond to the mother, she uses that anger to study, to answer those questions. Do you get a sense now? Okay, good. Forcing thoughts to remain unconscious in order to avoid the anxiety that would result if they were conscious is the definition of which Freudian defense mechanism: regression, projection, repression, denial. Repression. How about others? Why are we quiet? Let's go on. Open your mic and speak. Repression. Ah, very good. All right. Richard was about to cry while watching the blood coming out of a father as his son hit him. But she did not cry. Richard was a girl here. Let me read the way it is. But she did not cry thinking that it was not real. Which type of defense mechanism did she had followed to avoid crying? So a boy is beating the father, blood is coming out, and then Richard thinks it's not real. What type of defense mechanism was used? Intellectualization, humor, identification, idealization. Which one would you pick? Okay, A. Next one. Anyone else? Okay. And then the third one. Okay, good. Whenever, okay, didn't we do this one? Okay, they just use the same name. Whenever Nitesh feels stressed due to a lot of reasons, Ritesh starts thinking that he is roaming on the beach with his partner. In this way, he can reduce the stress and can feel relaxed. What type of defense mechanism does he follow? Autistic fantasy, acting out, none of these, altruism. Eh? Okay, good. Fantasy. Nilas has, uh-huh. Which one? Altruism? Anyone who remembers what altruism is? Uh, Good. That is altruism. So you forget about the negative circumstance that you are facing so that you can help others to have that sense of uh, of uh, of fulfillment because there's something that you have done for someone. Okay. Nila's husband never gives her time to pass with him. He does not give importance to her feelings, but recently Nila had got a good friend. The friend is her husband's friend too. What type of defense mechanism did Nila follow? Resistance, regression, reaction formation, repression. Which one would you pick? So Nila is not treated well by the husband, so she decides to make her husband's friend a friend also. Reaction formation. How about others? So that is how you remove some answers when you're answering MCQs. MCQs in medicine will be like really, really, really tricky. You'll be seeing as we handle MCQs for anatomy, physiology. They are very tricky. Almost everything that you'd have studied as part of the answer might be there, but you have to choose one. Okay, so the best we could go for there is C, right? Nila forgot the mental torture faced in childhood after receiving so much anxiety at present. Which type of defense mechanism is she following? Unknowingly. Retroflexion, regression, reaction formation, repression. Repression. Okay, good. Shem got the result and came to know that he failed the examination. Immediately, he assumed that the result was wrong because his teacher had done a mistake in adding the numbers. Which type of defense mechanism he had opted to keep himself fine? Displacement, denial, dissociation, emotional insulation. B. Denial. How about others? Okay, good. Anna's husband dies and she continues to set a place for him at the dinner table. This is an example of repression, projection, denial, project, problem, forecast, coping, adaptation. Denial, okay. Which type of defense mechanism we, the common people, have? We do the mistakes and blame others. Which type of defense mechanism we, the common people, have? We do the mistake and blame others. Projection, rationalization, in isolation, introjection. Eh? Okay. The third one, who else? Rationalization. Wow, it's now interesting. So let me hear another one so that we see who is going to win, which answer is going to win. Okay. So where you are finding a problem in others when it is you is wrong, that is projection. You're projecting something. Remember, rationalization is something bad has happened, but you are using reasoning to explain why it has happened. I actually didn't want it. Okay, and something like that. Defense mechanisms are always undesirable. True or false? Okay. Okay, so it's false, huh? They are not always. Remember, we've got the adaptive ones, which are actually good. Which of the following is an example of that one we answered? Jack has just received his HIV test results. Upon getting the result sheet, he tears up the result sheet and throws it in the doctor's face. It can be said to be in the denial stage. True or false? Okay. Which of the following? Which? Why? What is acting out? Try to explain here. Okay. Okay, you actually learn there are five stages. You learn later. There are five stages when it comes to handling grief. That is what happens when someone dies. Denial is one of them. You can't accept that something has happened. You can't accept that you are sick. So you end up tearing the paper and throwing it at the doctor. Okay. Which of the statements below are true about defense mechanism? Select one or more. So you are going to be telling me if it's true or not. A, used to cover up a problem from others. Is that true? Is that true about defense mechanisms? It's used to cover up a problem from others. So there is false and true. Okay, we'll come back to it. And then B, operates at an unconscious level only. Is that true? Why is it false? Ha. Hello, I had mentioned this a lot. So look at that. Isn't the option saying unconscious? So defense mechanisms are unconscious. Okay, because of the word only at the end, right? And then C, provides refuge for problems one cannot cope with. Is that true? is false. Provides refuge for problems one cannot cope with. Is that true? Okay. Protects one from anxiety. Is that true? Even A is true. Used to cover up a problem from others. Think of some defense mechanisms that we talked about where there's a problem now, you try to forget about it so that you focus on something that is another problem. Only people with mental health issues use defense mechanisms. True or false? False. Okay. Mwansa is a second year medical student who is preparing for an anatomy exam. He anticipates potential areas of difficulty and joins a CDS Academy and a study group to proactively address those challenges before the exam date arrives. His action portrays lack of self trust, anticipation, humor, none of these. Anticipation, good, good. John is a second year medical student who wrote a physiology test of which he complained it was hard. Knowing that he couldn't change anything and had another test in immunology, he decided to focus more on the upcoming test and forget about what he wrote in the previous one. This is an example of being an intelligent student, suppression, rationalization, avoidance. Okay, good, suppression. David and Peter like the same girl in their class. When he wanted to ask her out, he found she was already dating his friend and was frustrated. When he went home, he released his anger on his sibling, picking a fight over a minor issue instead of expressing his jealousy to his friend. This is an example of denial, displacement, intellectualization, avoidance. Okay, okay, good. In an anatomy test with a question which read, where does T cell maturation happen? Mwansa answered the thyroid gland instead of thymus gland. After getting the results and found that he got it wrong, he says it was a slip of the pen and he meant to write thymus. This is an example of intellectualization, rationalization, avoidance, fantasy. Intellectualization, okay. Others? This one I knew it would be trick. Another one? Anyone else? Intellectualization. So I'm going to allow you to have a small debate on these two. And then post the answer in the group. All right. And then I'm going to tell you the answer. Jane is a young Christian. Okay, please go on. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. So look at this. Look at rationalization. You are justifying your behavior or your action or your feelings with seemingly a logical or reasonable explanation. You've seen logical or reasonable, often because you don't want to feel guilty. Why did you feel I wrote this? No, you don't want to feel guilty. Intellectualization is you want to distance yourself from emotional aspects of a situation. You want to focus on the excessively intellectual aspect. What could have been the cause? This, I think, was wrong. So this didn't happen. So now give me the answer. Hmm. Good. So it's rationalization. Hope you have gotten it. Okay, good. Jen is a young Christian woman who is really struggling to stay away from sexual activities. If she stays away for a day, the following day she ends up with another man. She does not accept that he is a fornicator and just says it is a temptation from the devil. This is an example of acting out, denial, avoidance, repression. Acting out. Okay. Let's hear of others. Denial. Okay, so this girl is denying. Remember, acting out is you are trying to do something as a result of something that is on hand. You are doing this because of this. That is acting out. Because there is confusion at home, that's why I'm drinking and everything like that. Alex and Sam have been living together for several months. Alex is upset because Sam often leaves dirty dishes in the sink and doesn't clean up after cooking. Okay, but cannot confront him direct about the issue. One morning, Alex notices yet another pile of dirty dishes in the sink. Instead of saying something to Sam, Alex sifts loudly and starts washing the dishes, making sure to do it noisily and with a noticeable air of annoyance. Later in the day, when Sam asks if everything is okay, Alex responds with a forced smile. Oh, everything's just great. But their tone and body language makes it clear that they are unhappy. This is an example of avoidance, passive aggression, rationalization, denial of reality. Okay, passive aggression, good. Vupe was seated in a room eating. Few minutes later, a roommate entered and mistakenly hit her plate and the food spilled. So supposed to be I there, not E. Vupe immediately rushed to her boyfriend's room and burst in tears, explaining what her roommate did. What kind of defense mechanism did Vupe portray? Childishness, regression, self-sabotage, fantasy. Okay, good. Regression. Naam was living happily with her family. As days went by, she noticed her parents stopped communicating well, started fighting until they separated. Frustrated by the occurrence, she decided to start sleeping with men anyhow and lost herself. Naam is portraying self sabotage, acting out, isolation, disassociation. Acting out, good. What defense mechanism is described below? Mosmo is a young man who does not want to go out to work but imagines himself as a rich and powerful man in society. If he is seated alone in the day, he sees himself controlling a very big company and firing lazy workers. Self belief, fantasy, he sees in the future acting out. Okay, fantasy. John is a second year medical student who is listening to a conversation between a client and his lecturer, who is a psychiatrist at UTH. The client explains that he was really prepared for a job interview, but as he was about to be interviewed, he started shivering and saying to himself that he couldn't do it because there were important people. As someone who has learned defense mechanism, John was trying to figure out what the client was portraying. What would have John figured out? The patient had self sabotage, low esteem, weak in character, mentally retarded. Which one would you pick? A. How about others? It's quiet. Okay, so that is self sabotage is correct. Huh? James lost his son from a traffic accident. To avoid crying and having deep emotions, he says his son would have survived if there was a hospital nearby. James is showing rationalization, intellectualization, denial, fantasy. Which one? Intellectualization. Okay. John has strong feelings of dislike or resentment towards his colleague Mike. However, John is uncomfortable acknowledging these negative emotions because he believes that harboring such feelings is normally wrong, morally wrong, or socially unacceptable. Instead of confronting his true feelings, John shows exaggerated friendliness and kindness to Mike. Whenever John is around Mike, he goes out of his way to be overly pleasant, offering compliments, being helpful, and constantly engaging him in friendly conversations. To an outsider, it would seem as if John genuinely likes and admires Mike. However, deep down, John's true emotions are those of dislike or resentment. This is an example of pretense, reaction formation, denial, rationalization. Okay, how about others? Okay, I, I don't just want you to learn psychology. Please learn this also. Don't be that one. Pretending as though you like someone. Sarah witnessed the killing of her parents in a robbery that happened at her house as she hid. The memory of the event is so distressing and overwhelming that Sarah's mind automatically pushes it out of her conscious awareness as a way to protect her from the emotional pain associated with the memory. She may not even be consciously aware that she witnessed such an event. This is referred to as repression, regression, accommodation, denial of reality. Repression. Very good. Sarah is in a romantic relationship with Mark. However, Sarah has low self esteem and deep seated insecurities. Whenever Mark received attention or praise from others, Sarah feels threatened and feels that he might leave her for someone better. To cope with her feelings of inadequacy and jealousy, whenever Mark accomplishes something noteworthy, Sarah dismisses it as insignificant, saying things like, "Oh, anyone could have done that. It's not a big deal." This is an example of bad attitude, no gratitude, devaluation, regression. Okay, that is devaluation, all right? And the very last question here, Jen is a highly ambitious and competitive individual. However, she is uncomfortable acknowledging her competitive nature. Instead of recognizing her own competitiveness, Jen projects it straight onto her colleague Sarah. On time, Sarah came out highest in a psychology test. Jen started to attribute competitiveness to Sarah, saying things like, "Sarah is so competitive. She's always trying to outshine everyone and make me look bad." In reality, it's Jen who struggles with her competitive nature. This is an example of devaluation, projection, regression, denial. projection.